Before Eden, there was a descent, a moment when the heavens bent toward the earth, and matter remembered its stellar origin. The tablets whisper it between cracks and symbols. The gods were not born of faith, but of the firmament. They descended wrapped in fire, and where their feet touched, the clay began to breathe. Humanity was not their perfect work. It was their experiment, a bridge between flesh and light, between dust and eternity. But that encounter, that touch between divine and earthly, was not a blessing. It was a fracture.
Since then, man walks remembering a sky he can no longer see, and a voice that still calls him from within. Later, scriptures hid it beneath symbols, rewrote it with fear and devotion. But before Genesis, before Adam, before sin, there was an older story, one where the gods did not speak from above, but walked among us. Today, Kodigistas, we don't open a myth, but a memory. The memory of when heaven touched the earth, and humanity began to remember.
The descent. Those who came from heaven to earth. In the oldest tablets of Sumer, a word repeats like an echo suspended in time. Anunnaki. Those who from heaven came down to earth. It is not a metaphor. It is a memory. A record describing not the imagination of man, but his first contact with the impossible. Eridu was their first throne. A city not born from clay, but from the will of the firmament. The Sumerians did not dream it. They remembered it. And on its walls they carved the story of those who brought order to chaos, light to the abyss, consciousness to the clay. Among them, 3 names shone like constellations. Enlil, lord of air and command. Enki, bearer of knowledge and compassion. And Ninhursag, the mother who united divine essence with earthly matter. Together, they shaped what man would call life. But their purpose was not worship. It was creation, a divine project that later texts turned into myth and religion into dogma. Long before it was written, "Let us make man in our image," that same phrase had been spoken in Sumer, in a language time almost erased. Because the plural of the creators, Elohim, did not begin in the Bible. It began in Sumer. And if men carved in stone that the gods descended, why did theologians call it fantasy? Who benefits from forgetting those who came from the sky? Perhaps Kodigistas. The story of the gods was not a human invention, but the reflection of something that truly walked among them, something we later decided to call faith, so we wouldn't have to call it truth.
The human project of clay and blood. The tablets say when the gods looked upon earth, they saw it barren. The rivers flowed, the winds danced, but there was no one to name them. Then Enki, lord of the deep waters and hidden knowledge, proposed an act that would defy the order of the universe, to create a being that would remember them. With Ninhursag, mother of all flesh, he took the essence of the Anunnaki, their blood, their breath, their fire, and mixed it with the dust of the world. From that impossible union, the first man was born, a body of clay, animated by a spark of eternity. It was not a miracle, it was design, a work of divine engineering where flesh was laboratory and consciousness an experiment. They called him Lulu Amalu, the worker, the intermediary between gods and earth, a being made to serve, but one who soon began to look beyond his labor, beyond the heavens, beyond his own limits, because something within him awoke, a spark that was never meant to exist, a fragment of Enki's wisdom encoded in his blood as a genetic secret, and thus man raised his head for the first time, not to obey, but to ask. Was life a miracle or a modification? Were we born of divine love or of an experiment gone too far? Perhaps the serpent of Eden did not tempt man. It only activated what already slept within him, because knowledge was not a sin. It was a program, a line of code written in sacred fire, hidden within the spiral of our DNA. And ever since, every living cell carries the same ancient question in silence. Who created us, and why?
The conflict of the gods. The price of knowledge. The fire of knowledge always demands a price, and when men lit it, the gods felt fear. Enlil, lord of air and command, saw in humanity a flaw that threatened divine order, a reflection too close to their own creators. Too much reason, too much freedom. Enki, on the other hand, looked upon mankind with compassion. He was the one who gave them the spark, understanding, science, awareness, so they could see beyond servitude, the gift that made them alike, and at the same time condemned. From then on, heaven was divided, power against mercy, law against wisdom, the god of punishment against the god of forgiveness. Enlil ordered silence. He sought to erase the imperfect creation with a flood, a cleansing that would not wash the earth, but wash memory itself. Water as judgment, forgetfulness as sentence. But Enki disobeyed. He whispered to men the secret of survival, and in that act, rebellion became love. For one who defies authority out of compassion is no longer a traitor, but a protector. Thus was born the dualism that still inhabits every faith, the God who demands obedience and the God who offers understanding, both warring within the same divinity and within us. Perhaps the flood was not divine punishment, but the gods' fear of their own reflection. And perhaps humanity's disobedience was not pride, but gratitude. Because while some sought to erase history, others planted within human blood the eternal seed of memory.
On the flood, the reset of the experiment. The waters came as a faceless voice. They did not scream, they remembered. The winds roared over temples and rivers rose against the land. Nothing escaped the tide of oblivion. In his wrath, Enlil decreed the end of the experiment. The world was to be purified, humanity erased as a divine mistake. The flood was not punishment, it was a reset. But Enki, the one who loved the imperfect, couldn't bear the silence of extinction. In dreams he spoke to a man, Ziusudra, the long-lived one, the one later called Noah. He revealed the sentence of heaven and the path to survive it. Build an ark, he said, not just to save bodies, but to preserve memory. And so, when the waters covered the world, history did not die. It merely changed its name. Men would rewrite it centuries later with new symbols, new gods, but with the same guilt for having survived divine judgment. For 40 days, the earth did not breathe. Heaven and ocean merged into a single abyss, and when calm returned, no temples nor tablets remained. Only a new humanity, without past, without origin, unaware that it had been remade. The flood didn't just wash the earth, it washed memory. And from that forgetfulness was born religion, the need to explain what was once known. Codigistas. It was not water that erased history. It was the fear of remembering. Because one who remembers the origin can never again be slave to the dogma.
The celestial legacy, the spark that remained in us. When the waters withdrew, the earth breathed again. But something had changed. Heaven no longer spoke through thunder, and the gods no longer walked among men. Yet their mark remained. Not in temples, not in stones, but in us. In every cell, in every dream. In that restlessness man feels when he looks at the stars and doesn't know why he recognizes them. Perhaps what descended from the sky never truly left. Perhaps the true legacy of the Anunnaki was not their power, but their memory. A code written in blood, a genetic melody that still vibrates in the human soul, waiting to be remembered. Because DNA is the new clay tablet, the place where divinity signed its name, and where science, thousands of years later, would find the gods again, in the form of sequence. They taught us to look for God in the sky, when in truth, they left him inside us. Man was not created to serve, but to continue the work. We are the heirs of their spark, the bearers of a memory that transcends time, the conscious fragments of an experiment still breathing. Codiguistas. Every time a human asks about their origin, an ancient god awakens within. And perhaps that was always the plan, that the creators become the creation, and the creation become consciousness.
The names that survive time. The desert wind still blows over the ruins of Sumer. No one hears their voices, but the stones still remember. Among the broken fragments of the tablets, an echo repeats the names history tried to erase. Anu, the sky; Enlil, the command; Enki, the wisdom; Ninhursag, the eternal mother. They were the ones who shaped mankind's destiny, and though time covered their temples with sand, their shadows still breathe in myths, in scriptures, in the collective unconscious of humanity. Genesis changed their names, but not their essence. What once were gods, later were called angels, and what once was knowledge became faith. Every culture gave them a different face, but all were born of the same light, the fire of the origin. Today we call them symbols, archetypes, myths, but the stars still bear their names. And when man looks at them, he feels, without knowing why, that he once knew them. Codiguistas. The story of the Anunnaki did not end with their departure. It merely changed its stage, because the conflict that divided the gods was not lost in the heavens. It was inherited by us, and thus the echo of the first descent prepares to repeat itself. The next story will not be told in stone, but in spirit.